Yes, so we're going to turn our attention to football now on the SportsMax Zone on this Friday. The Wren Nephew Jamaica Premier League will start match week 8 on Sunday with many interesting fixtures to look forward to. Let's see what's on tap for Sunday's fixtures. Dunbeholden against Chapelton Maroons, Arnett Gardens Humberland, Portmore against Molynes, Tivoli Gardens tackling Cavalier. That will be live on SportsMax. Also live on SportsMax, Racing United against the struggling Harbour View. Then on Monday, in a SportsMax doubleheader, Veer against Mount Pleasant. That's on SportsMax 2, I would think. And then Waterhouse against Montego Bay will be on SportsMax later in the night. Now, with so many tantalizing matches coming up, no doubt there is much to preview before they get underway. And here to do just that is SportsMax football analyst Lige Williams, who I gather will be spending a lot of time today with us on the show because there is also some schoolboy football discussion to talk after this. Tough going for the teams in the Jamaica Premier League so far. I see that Cavalier at the moment is the only undefeated team in the league, but the top of the table looks pretty tight.
Yeah, as I mentioned when we were previewing the league, early in the season, or speaking about the league early in the season, I think that from 1 to 14, I think each team can beat each other. So I think that there's quality in each team. I think obviously that there are some teams that are struggling. Dunbeholden was struggling, but they got an important win against Mount Pleasant a couple of days ago.
How shocking was that? Before you continue,
that's hugely shocking.
Yes.
I mean, not so much to the point where I'm falling off my seat, but the fact that Mount Pleasant have been struggling a bit. But Dunbeholden are a team that was their first win of the season. They haven't been playing well at all, so it was really impressive by them to really lock in and get that win against Mount Pleasant. But I think all across the league, there's so much quality in the league, and especially in the coaching in the league. So I'm not really surprised that the table is so tight, and I expect to see more quote-unquote shock results moving forward.
Yeah, we were asked to focus quickly on the Tivoli Cavalier game. Cavalier coming off a big 7-0 win over Mocha FC from the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean Cup semis, having drawn 0-0 with them in the first leg. So clearly Rudolph Speed did some studying and getting a lopsided win in the second leg. So they are high on confidence, Cavalier. And when I listen to Rudolph Speed talk, he isn't really getting carried away with what happens in the regular season, because he knows that all he has to do is make the top 6, and then that's where the competition starts.
Yeah, of course, I think he'll want to make the top 2 again so that he can get back into the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup. But yeah, Cavalier are just riding high there. They have a really good squad with more players to come in January, especially after schoolboy football ends. And they've been so consistent for the last 5-6 years. They've won titles. They're going back to their what would be now a second consecutive final in the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup. They're probably favored to win that trophy as well. So they've been confident for quite some time. They have a lot of quality, as I said. And what I like is that they've added a lot of variation in their setup. So usually we see Cavalier as a team that can sit back and then counter. They're adding much more of a possession-based aspect, which is what we saw when Cavalier just came into the league. So they're adding much more of a possession-based aspect. So it doesn't matter what sort of game plan a team comes up to face them. They have this certain bit of inevitability when they hit the field, and they are unbeaten. They do have 3 draws, but I think they've just been taking their time and cruising, as you said, because I think when it's all said and done, they'll definitely be in the top 2 of the league standings again. Yeah,
what's been going wrong with Tivoli? Because they were pretty solid last year. I know that Justin Dunn's goal-scoring form of last year has left him. Hopefully he gets it back at some point during the season. But they've been pretty disappointing so far this year for Coach Wade.
Yeah, I remember specifically when we were speaking about previewing the season overall, and we were speaking about Tivoli. I'm wearing an orange shirt. This is not for Tivoli, by the way. It's just, I just picked something out, But when we were speaking about Tivoli specifically, because I remember we spoke about the transfers that would be taking place and the transfers that had taken place. And when I looked at Tivoli, they had lost some important players. They lost Alton Lewis to Arnett Gardens. They lost Odin Pennycook to Mount Pleasant. Those are 2 of their defensive stalwarts. And I think when you look at their squad, they didn't replace those players amply. and then they would just be relying on Justin Dunn to replicate, as you said, his goal-scoring exploits. He was the second highest scorer in the league last season, yet to score, and I think that has been the issue for Tivoli. What you're seeing on screen now is one of their only 2 league goals of the season in 7 games, which is really poor. Not what we grow to expect from a Jerome Wade coach team, because he's synonymous with fluid attacking football. But I think it's become a little bit bogged down. A lot of the thrust that a lot of his players had isn't there anymore, in my opinion. Because remember, last season he brought in a lot of players that he would have been very familiar with from his Arnett days, Lennox Russell, Steve Clark. And halfway through the season, they added a real buzz, a real spark to the Tivoli attack. I don't really see that happening this time, and I think there's some, I'm not going to say there's some structural issues, but there's certainly some things in attack that Tivoli need to work out. Their defense is still relatively all right, but in attack, I think they have a lot to work on, and they would do well to work on it because they're loitering right above the relegation zone right now.
Yeah, and on that note, what can we expect for this matchup that will be live on SportsMax?
I would go out on a limb and say I would expect a Cavalier win, probably a relatively comfortable Cavalier win, because I don't see Tivoli turning their form around. They did play relatively well against Mount Pleasant last weekend, and Mount Pleasant had to score a set piece to beat them, a corner, a Kimoni Bailey corner. But Cavalier, as I was mentioning before, they have so many ways to beat you. So if Tivoli are possessing the ball well, Cavalier, they have the transition threat to beat Tivoli. If it's up to Cavalier to possess the ball and try and break down Tivoli, they also have the players and the means to do that as well. So I think Cavalier, they're so multifaceted, so I think they'll get the job done against Tivoli this weekend.
Do you expect some of the goal scorers from the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup to feature in this matchup as well? I saw Kylie, the Trini, was among the goal scorers. 2 goals for him.
Yeah, no, he's really growing. He started on the bench for most of the season, Kylie Avery, and then he's continued to grow and get more involved in the team. And when he comes off the bench, especially for any of the front 3, because Cavalier attackers are fast, they are rapid. So when they get a bit tired and they sub on 2 other rapid players to replace them,
yeah,
it's really a threat for any team. So I think Avery, either from the start or off the bench, will definitely have an impact as the season goes along.
Yeah, so can you give us a prediction for this match before we look at the other ones?
Oh, I haven't done a prediction in so long.
Because you haven't been on the show, so predict now. That's what you get for being away.
I would say I'm going to lean towards a 3-0 Cavalier win.
All right, so no goals for Tivoli.
Following the trends, that's what I do, you know.
All right, and what about the Humber Lion Arnett that is set for Sunday as well? Looks like a mouth-watering matchup. What are we expecting?
Yeah, that one's going to be tight. A lot of Arnett's games this season have been pretty tight. Humber Lion now coached by Donovan Ducky, and if you're involved in Jamaican football or been watching Jamaican football for quite some time, you'll know that Donovan Ducky is a coach that doesn't like to give too much away. Humber Lion actually drew their first 3 league games. They're very defensively solid, coming off of a 1-0 win against a Malines team who are struggling a bit, but one thing Malines know how to do well is score, and Humber Lion stunted a lot of what they tried to do in attack really well this past weekend. So I think Humber Lion will do a good number on Arnett, and that game is going to be much tighter, in my opinion, than what we'll see between Cavalier and Tivoli.
Yeah, the Harbourview racing game is also on SportsMax. Lige, that will be a fixture that we look closely at. Can you talk quickly about Harbourview's struggles this season? They were champions just a couple of seasons ago, but they've won only 2 of their 7 matches so far and are actually on a 3-game losing skid.
Yeah, you know...
I mean, racing are relegation at the moment,
yeah,
but we have seen where racing has potential to get good results.
Yeah, that's why I like to prioritize performance over the results, because as you were saying, you see racing, you see them, you see the quality, you see that they're just not scoring their chances. And although Harbourview in their last game missed a penalty, which would have at least earned them a point, I do think that this Harbourview team from game 1 against Chapelton aside, they're a bit lackluster. They're not quite at the punches. They have quality players. Their setup is decent in both an attack and in defense, but there's nothing standout about it. There's too much space in between their lines often. They're decent on the ball, but not great. They just don't have an identity to me. So I think against a lot of teams, they're pretty easy to play, and I expect Racing to probably do a number on them. I expect this to be Racing's 2nd win of the season.
Yeah, and quickly before we go to the break, Portmore have been pretty solid. They're just 1 point off the lead at the moment. How do you look ahead to their fixture this weekend?
I think they'll get the win as well. I think they've been firing in attack since changing their system to a 3 at the back, having 2 attacking wing backs, and all of their interior players are doing really well. Guthrie is doing really well, and I'd like to, here's a pass from Guthrie, and this is a lovely goal as well from a couple of weeks ago, but I'd like to even say Junior Grizel from Portmore, he's playing really good. I actually found out a couple of days ago that we're going to go on to schoolboy football soon, that he's actually still a student at Glenmuir High, so it's a bit lucky for the Costa Cup teams that the man that has 4 goals in the Jamaica Premier League is ineligible to play in the Costa Cup. But he's a quality player as well, adding to Portmore's attack, and I think that Portmore will continue to fly despite my being a bit skeptical of them early. The tactical shift that I've seen, there he is scoring a goal, Grizel, and the tactical shift that I've seen from them, they've continued to grow, and I like what I'm seeing from Portmore now.
Yeah, okay, so Premier League football from the Red Nephew Jamaica Premier League coming up this weekend. Matches live on SportsMax and SportsMax 2 Sunday, and also on Monday evening. We go to break. We'll be back with more football talk in a moment.